Welcome, everybody. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Andrew Merrill with Stone, Rudolph, and Henry. And with me is Robyn Householder, President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau of Middle Tennessee and Southern Kentucky. Before we start, there's a couple of items that I'd like to go over. We use a chat window for any type of questions that you may have. Feel free to type it during the presentation. We'll try to answer them as we can, and definitely try to answer them at the very end if you have questions as well. I'd also like to introduce Charlie Brown. He is the IT manager at Stone, Rudolph, and Henry, and he'll be joining us here and will help answer any additional questions that you may or may have during this presentation. As we begin, this is going to be the online technology help for changing times. Just want to make sure everybody can see my screen. I'd like to introduce myself. I've been with Stone, Rudolph, and Henry since 2015, and that was right after I graduated Austin Peay in 2015. And before that, I was in the military for 8 years. Okay, the first area that I'd like to cover is a cyber attack. What is a cyber attack? That is any type of offensive maneuver employed by individuals or whole organizations that targets computer information system infrastructure, computer networks, and or personal computers, devices by various different means. And it's either their goal is to steal, alter, destroy systems by hacking. And they can be labeled in different contexts, depending on what they're doing, is either a cyber campaign, cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, and then they can do this by installing spyware. They can also attempt to do this by destroying infrastructure. And sometimes you can see this when you have nation versus nations. An example of that is when Iran was doing their nuclear power plants, the US created a malware type device to actually destroy it. And some other big players out there, Russia, China, and North Korea. There's three main areas of categories of attacks that can be done. You have active, passive, and social. We'll be going into a little bit more detail further on here in the slides. Active attacks. This is where they direct hack into your network or a system remotely. Hardware, this is where someone actually can connect to a device on your network directly to get them access. Dumpster diving, that's where someone goes through your trash looking for sensitive documents. Trespassing, that's where someone sneaks into your company, either bypassing lock systems on doors, trying to pretend like they belong there to get in. And others are disguised devices. That way someone gives you a thumb drive with information or a CD. You put that into the computer and it installs Trojans software to give them access into those. Part of this, into taking into context with active, in the news, you've heard a lot about banned companies that the US is either banning from being used in the US or they're trying to ban. Huawei, which is a lot for the 5G, is because it's backed by the Chinese government, they're seeing that there could be backdoors in that hardware itself that would let another country into an infrastructure in the US. Similarly, the US was trying to ban TikTok for those similar reasons as well. Going into your passive attacks, this is used with viruses trying to infect your computer system or network. Trojans are your back door to get into a computer's network. Spam, this usually comes in the form of email and it has the viruses or Trojans built into them without you knowing about it. You have malware, and that software is meant to compromise your system without completely disabling. That way they can access your network and your hardware and pull that information from it. Adware, this is not usually as damaging for stealing information, but this is where it started with your pop-ups. You go to certain websites and then you just get pop-up windows going all over trying to sell. And then of course you have the ransomware. And what that does is, that's been in the news a lot. It holds your system hostage basically by encrypting all of the files that it has access to, and the only way to get it back is to pay. Usually they're wanting like a Bitcoin or some type of currency. If you pay, don't know if you'll actually get the key or not to undo it. Or the other way is to start over, and basically if you have backups, you can do it that way. Ransomware has been hitting a lot. Example of this is a WannaCry virus, and that crippled a lot of network systems, especially in Europe. These are also going to be some big issues if you have outdated software, notably like Windows XP and Windows 7. Microsoft ending those supports, which means those are a little bit more susceptible than if you're keeping with the current software. The next one, you have your social attacks. This is where you have phishing, spear phishing, whaling, shoulder surfing, social engineering. And then this is not necessarily them breaking into the system at the time, but this is how they're going to get that information from you. So with phishing, they're trying to solicit information from you. When you're looking at some of this, a good example that I like to put out is those that seen the movie Now You See Me. There was a scene on there when they were talking to the billionaire and trying to get information like what his nickname was when he was growing up, his pet names. And those were all phishing attempts to get answers to his security questions into the bank. So it might seem innocent and joking around doing that, but people do that to get those things. And so you need to be careful when people are doing that, not to give out your information. Another example of this that happened a few years ago is there was some IT people that were working for a company, and people have been trying to get access, but their security systems were so weren't impenetrable for them. So what they ended up doing is finding out where IT was ordering their lunches from. And when they did that, they infected the local restaurant's website where they were ordering from with the menus, and they were able to get into the system there. So all need to be very careful of that. Another big one are your social attacks, and we see it a lot in the news with Facebook, the elections, social media, all that stuff. They're all trying to get your information. Okay, who is at risk? Everyone is at risk. A lot of times people think I have a small business. You know, I'm not one of those big businesses that do a whole lot of that information, but the thing is, everybody is vulnerable. And a lot of times those either smaller businesses or your home, your personal home, you don't spend the money on the security, or you're a little bit more lax. So, you know, everyone has to take precautions. The more interconnected we are, the more we're susceptible to it, especially in this day and age of Internet of Things, where our cars have internet. They need to be connected to the phones, your washers, dryers, refrigerators. Those are all connected to the internet, these new ones that have all the computer chips in them. And the problem is they're not like a computer, so they're not constantly being updated and having that security. So some of those things you need to take precaution with. Also, the most data breaches occur in North America. And on here I have their kind of the average. So in 2019, 2.7 billion identity records were posted online from Cell. In 2020, so far, the estimated average cost of a data breach is over $150 million. And in 2020, estimated global annual cost for data breaches is top $2.1 trillion. So as you can see, there's a lot in there as well. And some of these, when we're at risk, it's not something that we're doing on our own, but all these companies that we work with or are related to. Example is when Capital One got hacked. It wasn't anything you did, it was something on their end that got their system hacked, but now that affects you. Kind of showing you that just everything's there. And I'll go in a little bit more, but I want to push this out is for protecting us is some of the precautions we can take right away, such as doing two-factor authentication, changing up passwords. Those things don't make you an easy target when you constantly are doing those things. Sometimes it's a pain that we have to do it and try to get all these codes and texts and stuff, but that little bit of work will definitely help you. A couple different ideas here, as you can see on this slide, is a lot of data breaches. Now, these are only very small amount that I've listed. There's a lot of places you can go to, and it tells you exactly what happened. For example, Instagram. You have 200 million people were affected, and it was just because of poor security on the side of Instagram on that case. You go down to like 2019 with DoorDash, they were hacked directly. Go down further, you have Microsoft. Someone misconfigured a network and it exposed 250 million people's information. As you go down there, you can see that it affects large companies. The DoorDash was more when they were kind of in the startup getting going. This is before the pandemic when everyone was ordering food online. Government agencies are on here. You also have infrastructure like Verizon that does cell phones. The Home Depot is their credit card information. A lot of that is there. So everybody's pretty much susceptible at this time. And some stuff to think about when you're looking at these data breaches. Everyone's using cloud storage now. If you're a business, you need to look into that for the security. Is the company that you're going with secure? An example of this is if you're using Microsoft's OneDrive system. Their OneDrive for Business is HIPAA compliant, which is one of the security things you need for the medical industry. But if you go into the OneDrive personal accounts, those are not encrypted like the business one. And the other thing to take a look at is when you send stuff directly through email, once it's out there, it's on the servers of Microsoft, Google, Apple. And those emails are not necessarily secure. So if you're typing in, credit card numbers or bank account numbers, you don't want to do that because it's not secure and it can be taken. So if anyone gets in touch with in control of your email, they'll have access to your sent email. Okay. Next thing I want to go over, what information is considered PII? Now, PII is personally identifiable information. Where that comes from is a lot where I discussed earlier, dumpster diving, where they can get your social security number, driver's license number, credit card numbers, account numbers. One of the things you can do instead of throw that away, you shred anything that has PII on it. That's one of the things that can save you. I know when I was in the military, they use everything for social security number, and I know when I was in as well at the time, it's like I just, anyone asks for it, you give it because that's how they know you by. But after I got out, it's like your identity is tied to your social security number. A lot of people get their identity stolen. You need to be careful who, if someone's asking for it, why are they asking for it? Driver's license, they can take all of this information and open accounts in your name and all that information as well. And some of this information, as I mentioned earlier, kind of related to that movie, is when these questions people are asking you, can they get into one of your accounts with those? Those questions, that information, social security number, name, email address, and such. Okay. Like to go into some precautionary steps that you can take with passwords, login security. You want to make sure that you're using strong passwords. Make sure you're using uppercase, lowercase, numbers. Don't use the same password for all the accounts. One thing that I like to try to do is not all websites, are equally as important to you. Are you using the same password for Facebook as you are your bank, or are you using the same password for, one of your blog posts versus one of the other Amazon shopping? One of the things I try to look at is if someone got into that account, how devastating would it be to try to recover from that? So you want to make sure to do complex passwords, change those passwords up for those different sites as well. You definitely don't want to do that. Some of these other things you can do, especially when it comes to financial, is banks and credit card companies. When you log into the website, you can set them up to alert you every time you log in. Set up, the two-factor authentication anytime money comes out there. You can have it on the apps of the phones or emails. Hey, purchase was just made, anything like that. And a lot of these phones have fingerprints, facial recognition, all those different security steps to take. Definitely want to set those up. Way I look at it is someone got in touch with your phone and all that information on there, how much can that do it? So sometimes it is a pain to get those two-factor authentication set up, but that is your first line of defense. And in almost every case there, someone's been hacked, the two-factor was not set up, and that could have been the first thing that could have blocked that. That goes for iCloud, OneDrive, Google Drive, your Google email, Apple email, Microsoft email, all of those, you can set up two-factor on those accounts. Even Amazon has the two-factor. Usually if I open up a new account, any website or anything like that, first thing I look at is setting up two-factor. Because that's the first step. As I was going in, we're expanding into the Internet of Things. Amazon just had their sales recently for all their Ring cameras and the Ring doorbells. And you hear those news stories about their cameras getting hacked and things like that, when the first step would have been two-factor authentication on there. Another thing to look at for password-wise is you have password managers out there that can control passwords or help create complex passwords. And sometimes those are a good method. That way we're not using the same password over and over again, trying to change that up. I've listed on here a website. It's Haystack. And what you can do is go into that. You can put in different passwords. And what it will do is it breaks down in, if it was a brute force hack, how long it would take to crack that password. If it was stealthily, and it will change up. So you can put in capitals, lowercase, numbers, and it kind of tells you how quickly can one of those passwords hold up to certain type of attacks. Now, of course, that's where you also need to be careful about the phishing, because you don't want to give it up that you use a certain combination or anything like that for your passwords. Some other precautionary steps you have is public Wi-Fi. What I recommend is refrain from connecting to unsecure connections. One of the things I see a lot out there when I'm going out is people's cell phones, they might not have unlimited data. They are trying to connect to any Wi-Fi they can. And you need to be very careful about that. A lot of websites, when you go to it, if someone else is on there, they can see your screen and what traffic you're sending on there. Read multiple articles where people have done kind of experiments that they set up a hotspot and people connected to it. And of course, you have that language you have to agree to use it. And most people just scroll down and hit accept. And in that language, they were giving away their firstborn child because no one was reading it. Another example that I had in an article I was reading is a guy was on the plane on the Wi-Fi. He's writing a story about computer privacy. After the plane landed, the guy behind him asked him if he meant what he said, and basically what the guy behind him had done was hacked in, was able to see his screen and what he was typing. That happened about 2 years ago or so. So those are different things you definitely want to do. If you're doing a lot of business stuff, hotel Wi-Fi, that might not be secure. You might want to consider using a hotspot on your phone, which can be more secure as long as your phone's not connecting to that Wi-Fi. And sometimes you're looking at a lot of people, when they set up Wi-Fi, just set it up and don't make any changes to it, which that can lead it to be unsecure as well, or keeping it updated. So I know Wi-Fi is very convenient, but sometimes we need to kind of stop, take a second, and figure out what we're doing. Another example I like to do is if you go to Starbucks, you just don't hop on their Wi-Fi and start, going to your bank, making sure you know what your balances is, things like that. You want to be extra cautious when you're doing something like that. Next precautionary step is email. So there's a lot when it comes to email, especially nowadays, and we're in the remote environment. And this goes especially even more for remote learning for kids. Um, I've already had to go over to my nieces and nephews' house a couple times, even though I've reiterated it multiple times what happens. But with school, they now have email, and they're getting email, spam email, and stuff saying click here for free Robux, which is the in-game currency for Roblox, as well as free Amazon gift cards. Kids, this is the first time they're getting emails and they want free money for their games. They're just clicking on it, and it's kind of opening to a whole new world and having to try to do as much precautions. So I've taken time to educate my nieces and nephews the best I can and try to keep their systems secure. So those are things to take a look at. It's not just the adults and families or at work. Now they're targeting kids that have to do that for school type stuff. The other thing out there, and I know we'll go over a little bit later, is a lot of the spam and phishing emails we get. They're trying to pretend they're Bank of America, PayPal, Netflix, Amazon. And a lot of those times when I get emails from anything like that, and it just happens to be either my bank or something, I don't use the URL in the email. I will go directly to the website where they do post those notifications and emails directly. I try as a rule of habit to never use a link from an email unless I'm specifically know someone's sending it to me for that, and it works. The other thing I do is kind of in this picture up at the top, it says Bank of America, but to the right of it, it says it's some Comcast.net account. On your phone, if you click on it, it kind of pops out and will show you the actual email address. Bank of America does not use a Comcast account or a Microsoft account. They have their own email accounts. So those are kind of some of the ones I look at. A lot of emails I get or have .ru, which is pointing to Russia, or some different types of numbers and characters that they don't use. One of the recent ones I've seen is customer support at gmail.com, or is US Bank customer support at gmail.com. Seen a lot of those as well. The other thing when they come up is you might have PayPal, Netflix. I've even seen Zoom recently, but the logo was completely wrong. Usually I find if something does not look right or does not feel right, it usually isn't. And I always try to take as much precautions as I can. Especially with the emails reporting saying, you either missed a payment and they're going to lock it down unless you do something. A lot of those that I try to do. As another side step to this as well is a lot of people that have computers and they have their account's going to be an admin account. If that's the case, there's a couple other preventative measures you might consider. Getting into the control settings for your user account and dropping it down. That way, if you're looking at your email or you're surfing and you run across something like this, and then all of a sudden you get a pop-up message, something's trying to install and you weren't installing anything, you can kind of stop it before it goes anywhere on that. Usually if you're an admin account, it's usually up at the top and stuff will start installing even before you even know it. So those are a couple things that you can do as well. Another thing that some phones have, I know Outlook on my Android phone has it, and I can look at some of the other ones. But when I have a suspected email, and I think it's correct, up in the top right corner, there's 3 dots that I can click. And there's a section that says report and report junk. And when I click on it, it asks, is it junk mail or do you think it's phishing? And then I can send it to Microsoft. That way Microsoft can start tracking those email addresses and different things like that. So I'm not getting as much junk. And at the same time, we can try to help kind of stop some of this as well. One of the other things that is possible as well, it kind of depends on comfort levels sometimes, but when you have a email that you're not really sure about versus open it up on the computer versus your phone, sometimes your phones, they can be susceptible, but not as susceptible as certain types of things meant for computers. But if you do that, you need to see, okay, if my computer basically got hacked and I had to start over from scratch, could I recover from that? And one of the nice things is a lot of phones have backups that you can do it, and just is time consuming. But again, at the same time, phones are susceptible to viruses. It doesn't matter, Android, Apple, any of those, they can do it, especially if people start to jailbreak the phones and install certain apps. So we always want to be cautious on that. Everything can be hacked. Next area that I'd like to do for precautionary is antivirus and backups. It's always good to have backups and antivirus running on your systems. I know this can be one of the bigger costs when it comes to technology. I know when first sign somebody's trying to cut costs in either businesses or at home, especially when it's down, sometimes the first step is how much am I paying for backups or antivirus, and try to pull back to do that. That can be even more costly than keeping it. Some of the stuff that we look at for what kind of software to go out there, especially if a business, is how long will it take you to get back, recover from a backup and get back to running your business. The faster you can get backups, the more it usually can cost. Those are some of the steps. I know people that have servers in the cloud, either on Amazon servers, Microsoft servers. They can get a server up and running brand new in 5 minutes, like they haven't missed a beat. A lot of businesses can't afford that type, so there's other different types that you have, and that's kind of the stuff that you want to look at. I know a tech business in California, they were doing backups for one of their clients. They want to cut costs, so they thought they were getting a backup, and so he kind of let them use the backup that they ordered. They ended up getting malware, and they had to do backups. Well, when they went to do that, they found out that it wasn't a backup. It was just antivirus that wasn't even backing it up as well. And another one for another business, same business in California, they only had antivirus on one of the 4 servers they had, and it still took over a day and a half to get that one server back up and running as well. Okay. The next step, to cover precautionary steps, you have safe web browsing and apps. The same thing with email. If you go to a website and it doesn't feel right, definitely, most likely it's not. Usually when you're searching online and you get to a website you're trying to do, next thing you know, it's routing you to a .ru, that's Russia, .ca is Canada, and it starts sending you to different websites around the world. Depending on what you're looking for, you need to keep that in mind. One of the other areas that's affecting a lot of people right now, and I know a couple families around here, you have family accounts with Google, Microsoft, Sony, PlayStation, those type. A lot of the times you have like Fortnite, TikTok, YouTube. They lock it down until they're 13. Well, I know a lot of families, kids want to play, so they set them up an adult account. Well, when they do that, there's no kind of trying to keep safe sites for those kids. It kind of opens them up as if they're, have no free control. There's no limits on them. It is recommended that if you have kids, you set up kid accounts with their correct age. And while it's not 100% perfect, it does help that if you do that, you can set it up, their accounts, to have the blockage for their different ages, for if they do get online and they try to search for different things, it can kind of block some of those sites that a lot of people that can get into if they're not really sure how computers work. With like a lot of kids, they just start typing different things. That can lead them into a whole lot of trouble and a lot of work. And again, I've been with my nieces and nephews experience that I've had to go over there and redo computers from time to time. Even no matter how much I lock it down, there is still that possibility, but things to look into. Next is the precautionary steps for the work environment when you're doing it remotely. One of the big things that I see if you're working remotely from home, first thing, are you using a work computer or are you using your own computer? This can be also in for the business side. Are you wanting somebody to connect to your network from a personal computer, or would it be better to where it's a business computer that you have control over, the antivirus software, is it strictly for work? Keep it separate. Same business in California, they've had at least 4 different times, and 2 of these were from before the pandemic. People were working remotely from home. They didn't know it, but their personal computer had already been infected, and with some keyloggers that were tracking what they logged into, and people were able to log directly into the business's servers because they knew the username and password and didn't have any issues there. Some things you might want to take consideration into as well as if your kids learning remotely from home. They have school computers. Are they using school ones, personal computers, or is the only computer you have your work one that the kids are working on? So those are the different things that you want to take into precaution with. Another thing that came up is remote learning or remote working. You're using webcams and microphones. Make sure either if the screens need to get covered for the cameras, microphones, teach kids how to use those properly. I know a lot of stories that might not be necessarily cybersecurity side, but with a lot of kids working remotely from home, I've heard stories from teachers that they can hear everything going on in the background that's happening with families and see certain things. So even with kids, we need to educate them how to use that type of equipment properly as well. Next thing I'd like to look at is your network needs that keep changing. I know not too long ago we get a router from Best Buy, and we look at that, and most of those routers could handle about maybe 5 to 10 devices in your house, and some people that might work. But now that we have all the Internet of Things, we have the voice speakers, the plugs that activate by voice, the security cameras. Some of your needs might change to where you need almost like 40 devices connecting. But at the same time, you're looking at, are those devices firmware being upgraded? Some of the new ones can actually show you all the devices that are connected to it. That way, if you actually go into your system, you can see which ones, and do you have someone that got into your system or device that you don't know what it is? And those are certain things you want to look at. Is someone, access that Wi-Fi? Did you give your Wi-Fi password out? Is your password secure? Did you go through all the steps to finish setting up any of that Wi-Fi information as well? So those are all different things to look at. And again, like I said earlier, the Internet of Things is growing. Everybody's wanting to be interconnected. The refrigerators that can tell you what's in there. Is that software being updated? Can it be taken over? I know a few years ago when Amazon went offline for a little bit, it was a denial of service attack. And how they did it is they got a whole bunch of those Internet of Things, those washing machines, all to start pushing in on Amazon services that made their system crash. Same thing happens with Microsoft and Xbox Live frequently. Is they have a denial of service, it overwhelms their system. And a lot of people can now get all of these small devices. You get millions of them, can do as much damage as if it's just computers trying to take some of that stuff down. Also on here for computers, I know I mentioned doing family, like with Microsoft, Google, you can set up the parent accounts, the kids accounts. Make sure that, if you set those up, that your kids don't have access to the parent accounts that can open up everything. If certain things are secure, have access, to the bank accounts, different things like that. Other areas where this can be is you buy those Amazon speakers. They can do purchases by voice. Do you have that set up with a passcode? Did you go there and turn that ability off as well? And you can do that, and that can be part of your computers that need to be locked down. You can do the same with family plans with Android, blocking out who purchases apps and in-app purchases. You can lock all that down. So there's a lot out there. Most of the time that we have to kind of dig a little bit deeper to pull that out from those companies. They don't advertise it as much. But those are the things that need to look for and kind of keep an eye on. And that kind of came to my point, and I know Robyn Householder has some more information to go over. Didn't know if there was any questions out there or anything. that anybody had? Okay. If not, I can turn it over to Robyn.
Great. Well, thank you, Andrew. That you covered a ton of information that we also track on, and so thank you. Very well done. You know, just to put in perspective, one of the most recent statistics that we're tracking on as it relates to cyber attacks is there's more than 80,000 attacks every single day in the United States. That's a huge number. So again, definitely much more rampant than I think a lot of people realize. So what I want to do now is kind of pick up on the opposite side of cyber concerns, and that is with the holiday season coming up, with all of us being on our computers, on our phones, on our smart devices, so much more because so many of us are working from home, we're seeing a significant uptick in shopping scams that can also put your systems at risk. So again, my name is Robyn Householder. I'm the president and CEO of the Better Business Bureau in Middle Tennessee and Southern Kentucky. I've been with the Better Business Bureau system for about 26 years. And, you know, unfortunately, the scams just keep getting more creative. So if you would go ahead to the next slide. So, you know, every single day, what BBB is here to do is obviously create a marketplace where buyers and sellers trust each other. We're doing that through setting a standard of how companies operate. We're encouraging best practices and teaching businesses, you know, some of the things that they need to ensure that their interaction with their consumers are very, very positive and productive. We celebrate marketplace role models, and what we mean by that is we want to make sure that we're giving credit where credit's due. So whether it's through our accreditation program, whether it's through our rating or our online review program, or even something like our Spark Awards, which is where we recognize entrepreneurs, or also our Torch Awards, where we're recognizing businesses for just simply doing things right and giving them the resources that they need to ensure that that happens. We certainly spend some time, and this is probably what most of you know us for, is the denouncing substandard behavior. You see me and some of our team on the news and on the radio talking about scams and fraud and kind of the bad businesses, because celebrating the good ones is great, but we're just really work hard to try to keep you away from the bad ones. And then in terms of creating a community of trusted businesses, that's really our accreditation program. But all of this goes back to starting with trust, and clearly cybersecurity scams and shopping scams don't. So if you would go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so online purchase scams right now, the increase in activity since COVID happened is just astronomical. It's more than 60% up since the same time last year. The volume of activity as it relates to, the volume of the cost, the impact that the consumer is feeling in terms of what they're losing has more than doubled. So clearly online purchase scams definitely erode trust in the marketplace. You know, as Andrew shared, scammers are really good at copycatting other companies. And they're more likely to copycat well-known brands like Amazon, like Walmart. And so it's just a space where you have to be incredibly, incredibly careful. Next slide, please. So here's some just information that we've collected since 2015. Online purchase scams have compromised more than 13%. Well, 13% of them involve monetary loss. Now, what I didn't give you here is how many of them actually impact your systems, and that's about another 10%. And in 2020, that grew dramatically by 64%. So you can see, just by us all being more akin to shopping online, it's a much bigger problem. The number of people shopping weekly has increased by 29% since from pre-COVID to now over 37% since COVID. And we anticipate that number to continue to climb because of the holidays coming up. 83% of the people that took advantage or that were taken advantage of through an online shopping scam did in fact lose money, which is pretty substantial. And the average loss can be anywhere from 600, all the way up to thousands of dollars. We just had a young man lose $900 by trying to buy a puppy online, and it turned out to be a scam, unfortunately. So he's working with his bank right now to hopefully try to get that money back. And out of the 57% who did not research a website, they're more likely to fall prey to a scam. And so specific to what Andrew was saying earlier is you really have to look at the details. We refer to scammers as suffering from scammer grammar. Rarely do they have a good command of the American language, English language, and so you're going to find spelling mistakes in their communications and on their websites. You're going to find odd information in their URL address or their email address. And so again, just really, really pay close attention to that minutia, that fine detail, to ensure before you ever give anybody money for anything. Next slide, please. So here's just some of the stats that we're seeing. So online puppy scams, unfortunately, is the #1 scam that perpetrates the United States. You'll see that it's the exposure to the consumers that are looking for this type of a transaction is about 25%. And then the susceptibility, once they've been exposed to fall prey, is 67%. So that's kind of a scary percentage. The second most popular scam that's perpetrated online is motor vehicles. Now that would also include things like if you're selling a trailer online or your boat online. It's really any of that kind of that sort of space. Again, about almost 9% of the people trying to purchase those types of items online will be susceptible to scams. And then once they've been contacted by the scammer, they're about 43% more likely to fall prey. Medical and nutrition scams are another big one. Clothing scams, absolutely, and then also skincare. Now, oddly enough, what's not on here, and it has to do again with COVID and the fact that we're all sort of just, unfortunately, some of us are just killing time shopping online. Romance scams used to be in the top 3, but they're currently not. So next slide, please. So what's the motivating factor for those who lost money? Well, more often than not, it's price. So you go online, you're looking for a vehicle, you're looking for a new dog to bring home, and you're excited because you find a deal. Well, it's that old saying of if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And so that's the first thing that will reel you in is for whatever reason you're seeing a price that you just haven't been able to find locally or with companies that you're familiar with online. The second thing is the picture. We tell people when we talk about puppy scams specifically to do a reverse lookup, that when you see that adorable Bichon Frise or that awesome looking German Shepherd, take that picture and do a reverse lookup and see how many other places that photo has appeared. And more likely than not, it's going to be dozens and dozens of times. And so, and quite frankly, those dogs don't exist. And it's the same thing with product. Do a reverse lookup of that vehicle. Do a reverse lookup of that boat or that Gucci purse or whatever it is you might be looking for, and see if this is a legitimate opportunity for you. The other thing is availability of the item. And this one we're especially sensitive to right now because of COVID. We saw a significant uptick in this area immediately following sort of the marketplace shutting down. So you saw a shortage clearly of the old, we've all heard the shortages about toilet paper, hand sanitizer, masks. But guess what? There's quite a few other big ticket items that are still in short supply. Laptops are in short supply right now. Cameras for your laptop are in short supply right now. iPods, and because again, so much communication is happening in this kind of a medium. And so what you're seeing is all kinds of crazy pricing and offers out there for the types of technology that you need, to do your schoolwork from home or your employment situation from home, and folks are falling prey to that every day. Now, with the election, we saw this number jump up again because, again, there's this feeling of uncertainty in the marketplace. We don't really know what's going to happen. And so you're starting to see a shortage again in stores, which means the scammers are going to increase their efforts to take advantage of you. You know, one of the things we always talk about is that scammers are really nothing more than opportunists. They have no moral code. So if there's something going on in the marketplace, be it good or bad, they're going to sense that that's an opportunity for them to take advantage of you. The third thing is just the smoothness, the excitingness of the advertisement. You know, what is it they're saying? That makes you intrigued, that you're more likely to go through and click on that ad, click on that pop-up. Testimonials and reviews. Well, realize, you probably all remember a few months ago where you were seeing on the news that folks were getting seeds from China, face masks from China, ping pong balls from China. Well, that actually was a scam specific to creating false online reviews, because once that item was delivered to your home, they could confirm an address and a name that they would then use to create false reviews online. And why did they use seeds and masks and ping pong balls and things like that? Well, because they're extremely light. And it's actually cheaper to send something from China to the United States than it is for me to mail you something in Kentucky. And so that was the gist of that. So you have to give them credit for their creativity. But on the same token, you know, a gift in the mail that you weren't expecting is really rarely a gift. And then the other thing is just, again, that urgent need. You know, you really need that hand sanitizer. Your daughter really needs that iPad to be able to do her schoolwork, or you need a new laptop to do your work. And so you're frantic about looking for opportunities online because you can't find it locally. Okay, next slide, please. How does this impact legitimate businesses online? Well, clearly it's taking money out of the good guys' hands. So, but it also creates a lack of trust in the marketplace. So if you've tried to buy a puppy online and you find out that you've been taken advantage of, how good are you going to feel about that next engagement with potentially a legitimate breeder or someone that's just trying to sell a dog independently? You've lost trust in the transaction. The same thing with the electronics and all the other items. So the impact is substantial. And so although you may feel like you're the only victim, the reality of it is any legitimate business in that industry also becomes the victim. Again, 12% of the consumers that have been taken advantage of are going to hesitate to buy online again. So that's going to impact e-commerce. And then 5% are going to be more likely to purchase in stores. So that's a good thing for small town USA. That's actually a positive. But again, in general, it's going to negate any positive activity that they're trying to do online. Something that I don't have on this slide, though, that I do want to speak to is when you are getting these pop-up ads on your social media for a particular bargain, or you're seeing an ad on Facebook, or you're getting an unsolicited email to your account, chances are, again, that's an opportunity for them to try to take advantage of you. Well, similar to what Andrew said, is anytime you get a solicitation that you weren't expecting, be it a job offer, a sale, whatever, go directly to that company's website and see if it's legitimate, because chances are, if it was a pop-up ad, it probably isn't. Next slide, please. So here's some other things that you want to consider when you're shopping online, or what people take into consideration when they're shopping online. Typically, about 45% of our decision is based on testimonials and positive reviews. But as shared with you a moment ago, a large portion of what you see, and Amazon unfortunately has really suffered from this, is fake reviews. You feel good when there's listed contact information, but unfortunately it's rare for you to use that contact information pre-transaction. The problem comes into play when you find out that you're not going to get the product, or your credit card's been charged more than once. That contact information is bogus. And so if you are going to shop online, we do recommend that you test that contact information to see if it's legitimate. Again, the good news is for us, when you see that BBB seal, you're 37% more likely to purchase from them, and realize that we monitor companies' websites all the time to ensure that they in fact are safe. And again, that's for people that have lost money in the past. For people that have not, that trust factor is substantially higher. You know, if you have a return policy online. So that's something that if you're doing business online, you're going to want to make sure that you have what we call it being transparent. Make sure that anything about your transaction that you have with that potential customer is super clear, not only on what's going to happen once they buy, but potentially if they have to return it, or if there's any concerns that they may have with that product after they receive it. And then the other thing is just what's the language of the website look like? Is it simple? Is it spelled correctly? Does it look like it was professionally developed? People are going to be more likely to shop there. Well, one of the things that scammers are exceptionally good at is spoofing, meaning that they're taking a very legitimate website and in essence copying it and putting it into their space. And so again, you've got to be really careful. Is this really Amazon? Is this really Walmart? You know, is this really whatever retailer that you're typically shopping with? Check the URL, make sure that there's a lockbox, that it in fact is a secure site. Pay special attention to that URL address. Is this legitimately the company site that you thought you were going to? And if you decide that you want to take advantage of any of these opportunities that you get solicited for, do this. Take that company name, put it in a Google search, and type scam after it. And if you do that, you're going to find out what everybody else is saying about this particular organization that's soliciting your money. Next slide, please. Okay, some of the things that you want to do, again, that I probably touched on a few. If the deal looks too good to be true, quite frankly, it probably is. And so, you know, we are in a society that really appreciates instant gratification. We like to get quick response. We like to make quick decisions. We like the fact that we can buy something today and have it on our doorstep tomorrow. The problem with that is that we don't step back from the interaction and find out, is this legitimately what I need, what I want? And is it a good company to shop for? So we always say, just take a minute to breathe and be sure that you're doing business with someone that is reputable. Another thing, again, is those professional photos do not necessarily mean that it's legitimate. There's a lot of really great stock art out there for scammers to take advantage of. Some, again, I mentioned earlier, you know, it's absolutely rampant in the pet industry, it's rampant in the clothing industry, and it's absolutely rampant in the vehicle industry. So make sure you're doing that reverse lookup. And then before you buy, absolutely, again, just do your research. 57% of the folks that do research, or excuse me, 57% of the folks that don't do research end up losing about 81, they represent about 81% of the money that's lost. So that's a pretty scary statistic. So again, if you just take a few minutes to research. But the other reason why I wanted to talk about this, and you can go ahead and change the slide, is that a lot of these online shopping scams are also opportunities for them to download malware to your computer, or potentially do identity theft by accessing information in your computer. And so it's really important that not just you, but any of your employees understand that when they do get unsolicited emails or pop-ups, that that's something they have to stay away from, regardless of what it is. You know, and by the way, scammers don't really pay that close of attention to who they reach out to. You know, I actually had a phone call today that told me my social security number had been suspended, and they called my office line. So clearly that's a fraud. Recently, my team got an email that looked like it came from me and asked them to go buy gift cards. But luckily, one of them paid a little closer attention to the from line and noticed that the email address, in fact, was not mine. Here's some resources that I want to make you aware of. The first one is a Scam Tracker. And the reason Scam Tracker is at the top of the list is it's a tool that is not just used by us, but once a business or a consumer reports fraud on that site, that information is uploaded to the Federal Trade Commission, the Attorney General's office, basically any of the agencies that are fighting online fraud. And so you're fast tracking that data to them that they can also start researching. That coupled with the fact that by doing that, you're letting other consumers know that this is a bad organization or a bad problem. And so again, it's just bbb.org/scam tracker. You can also use it to see where scams are happening throughout the United States. It is a heat map. So if you type in a keyword as it relates to a scam, you'll be able to see if it's something that's happening in your own zip code, okay? If you want additional information about scam tips, again, just go to bbb.org scam tips. We have a ton of information that's updated daily on COVID. There's a dedicated site specifically to COVID-related resources for small business, and there's another dedicated page that's specific to COVID resources for the consumer. And again, it's updated in real time, be it state information, federal information, city information, information from the infectious disease folks, things like that. So feel free to, tap into that every day because it's changing all the time. Again, general coronavirus is also there, and there's quite a bit of information that you're going to see as it relates to coronavirus scams that are happening. And as the winter months come and we potentially see an uptick in the virus impacting folks, we fully expect the scams related to that to increase as well. And then last but not least is this time of year, anytime there's something special going on in the marketplace, be it good or bad, we see a significant uptick in solicitation scams for charities. And so, shortly after the tornadoes hit our community, we saw just hundreds of bogus charities pop up out of the woodwork. There's a ton of bogus charities right now preying on the elderly as it relates to COVID. And we're going to see more of it as the holidays get closer. So please take a minute before you donate to do two things. One, check and see if they're legitimate through give.org, but also go directly to the organization's website. If it's someone that you're genuinely passionate about, that you want to contribute to, don't do it through a pop-up ad or an unsolicited email. Go to that site and make your contributions directly to organizations that you know and are familiar with. And then last but not least, if you do fall prey to any of these issues, whether they're the ones that Andrew talked about or the ones we discussed, here's the contact information that you can use to reach the Federal Trade Commission, and also to reach the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that'll help you with anything related to online activity. And so I see there's something in the chat box. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. I don't think I have access to see the chat, so.
Okay. Well, we just got a chat. Someone actually joining us today actually received a small ugly Halloween pillow out of nowhere about 2 weeks ago.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's there. And as she was saying, today I actually had one email scam for PayPal actually today. And Netflix is a pretty big one that I had.
Yeah, Netflix is an ongoing problem. And you're getting Netflix scams both on your phone and email. Again, just don't click on anything on your phone that you're not familiar with, because it will download malware to your phone.
Does anyone else have any other questions or anything?
Well, I just want to say thank you to Stone, Randolph, and Henry for having us. I appreciate that. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to bbb.org anytime.
Yes, thank you for joining me, and thank you everyone for joining us at this time. If you guys have any other questions, you can email me or anyone at Stone, Randolph, and Henry, and you also have Robyn Householder's information as well. If you guys have any needs, just reach out to us. If not, thank you again for joining us today, and we wish you the best for the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.